Hello and welcome to SJP Advisor Stories. In this series, we interview SJP partners and advisors to share their real-life experiences. I'm your host, G Fittit, and if you have any questions that you would like to ask an SJP partner or advisor, please feel free to comment below or reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. So Declan, welcome to SJP Advisor Stories. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
So we open the show with the same question to everybody, and that question is, what does financial advice mean to you?
It's been a while since I've been asked that, actually. Effectively, it's the provision of a service that allows someone to leverage their financial potential. So I always talk to my clients about their financial potential. In theory, everyone can be really, really wealthy on one end of the spectrum. And then if they make poor decisions, they can be not very wealthy. And the difference is taking the right advice, making the right decisions to meet all of the objectives that that person wants. And financial advice is basically the difference between someone who doesn't do it very well and someone who does it very well. It's the service that bridges the gap between the two.
I love that. Brilliant explanation. Thank you, Declan. So let's learn a bit more about yourself. Tell us what were you doing before you joined SJP? And I know you trained through our academy, so we'll come on to that later. But what were you doing before you knew about SJP?
So I was not long. I had a quite short career in London where I was working in recruitment industry, specifically doing investment banking, headhunting, so more sort of call it executive search, if you like. And we were recruiting salespeople and traders for secondary markets in equities specifically. So traders working for investment banks, trading hedge fund money, etc. So I'd done sort of a couple of years of that, but I'd always come down to London with the aim of starting my own business. I didn't know in what. My whole family are all business owners. So I just knew I want to start my own business somehow. I need to get a job in London because I'm a country bumpkin. So I'd never really spent much time in London, figure out what's going on, and then find an opportunity to follow. And that's effectively what happened. Through the financial services exposure I got in the headhunting job, I figured out wealth management industry was growing and there was a big opportunity there. And some of the candidates and traders I knew, I said, what do you think of this sort of thing? And they were like, oh, I'm actually quitting my job to go and do that. So I was like, well, it must be on something. So I sort of poked around a bit to figure out where the opportunities were. And a family connection connected me with an SJP advisor. He said, oh, they've got an academy. Why don't you go and have a chat with them? And I was like, right, I can have my own business and work in this opportunity. Like it all kind of married up quite nicely. So yeah, that's kind of how I came to find the opportunity, really.
I love that. And you mentioned your family are all entrepreneurs. So tell us a bit about your family background and what they do.
Well, entrepreneurs a bit strong for some of them. I'm joking. I think so. Everyone's in farming, agriculture. So my mother's side of the family, my father's side of the family, and me now sometimes on the side in my spare time. And I'd always grown up with them being their own bosses and having to, go through quite difficult times. And farmers going through a bit of a rough patch now, but it certainly was when I was growing up due to globalization and various different factors. And I had to see them diversifying their businesses, trying to figure out other ways to make money because farming wasn't really doing it. So I'd always grown up around that environment of no one ever came home and complained about their boss. No one ever, on the worst side, they never took any holiday. So it was always this kind of like building environment of, this is ours and we're building it, looking after it. And it's like a family legacy. So yeah, I think that's maybe where the appetite to become self-employed, to be my own business came from. Certainly both my parents were always like, yeah, you don't work for anybody else, always just work for yourself and figure it out. And I suppose that probably got deep rooted somewhere in my mind, and here we are.
I think a lot of people listening will relate to that. I think there's often a desire to work for yourself, but like you're not sure what it could be or how you can do it. I think it's the what and then the how, isn't it? So you came across wealth management as a whole, and then luckily for us, SJP was one of the people you got introduced to. So let's compare then sort of what it's like being an employee to your life now, then if you could compare your recruitment role to now, what would you say?
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of irony in terms of what people think. Oh, I could be my own boss and I could take infinite holiday and I wouldn't have to answer to anyone or do anything annoying. When the reality is, it's kind of the opposite. So all of those sort of, I call them the soft bits that seem great, but you end up working significantly harder and you're always on. And that's never a bad thing though, because you don't begrudge it at all because it's yours. In the wealth management industry, your clients mean a lot to you. They're the reason you can run your business in the first place. And through the nature of what we do, we become so embedded in their lives. We're really invested in what they're trying to achieve. So if they need something, I'm on like a light bulb, and I will always respond and always be active. So that's kind of, I think, where people go a bit wrong. They think, oh, I'm gonna just have a really chilled out time and not have to do very much, but actually it's the opposite. That being said, the reward is just unbelievable, like so much better. I think what attracted me to starting in recruitment is that it was meritocracy. It wasn't a meritocracy as such. It was, you get paid and remunerated based on how you perform. That's it. Here are the rules of the game. Go out and play. And I always preferred that so much more than we'll do your performance review and maybe we'll give you a raise if we feel like it. And it's all a bit sort of a grey area, and I just couldn't tolerate that at all. I was like, I know what I'm worth, I know what I've done, so I would like the rules of the game to be laid out in front of me so I can go and make the best of it. So that transition from that kind of employee mindset of, well, this is my job description, this is what I'm going to do, and hopefully I will do well, versus I know exactly what I need to do and going out and doing it. And I love that. I'd never go back.
I love it. Me too. It just sounds like you say it's harder work, but it's the rewards, the satisfaction and the rewards are just worth it. And you're doing it for yourself. It's a very different feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Like, I can take a day if I need to because something's going on. I can organise my own time and I don't have to ask anyone for permission to be out of the office for an afternoon. I'll just do it, and that's pretty refreshing as well.
Absolutely. And so you knew you wanted to have a business of your own. And when you were exploring SJP or even before then, did you look at anything else? Any other opportunities catch your eye?
Yeah, I had a brief flirt with the idea of starting a fitness company, but that was because I was really into sport and rugby and I was passionate about it, but it didn't really float my boat when I really looked into it. And I know there was other opportunities. There's the salaried roles where you would maybe go and get qualified and start off as a salaried and then work your way up through a different business or through the other networks, people like Quilter and places like that. But the reality is SJP is so successful for a reason, and the infrastructure and the support and call it the spirit of the partnership, don't they, where everyone's happy to help each other. It did stand out a lot, and I did do a bit of research and I spoke to a few advisors and partners about what it was like, and even people who maybe come over from a different financial advice background who have been with a competitor, and they're like, oh, I'll never look back. Everyone's a little bit sheepish necessarily because SJP is so big and we're big competition that a lot of people face. Is maybe sometimes people get a bit unsure of SJP, but then they've come over and they've gone, oh, I'll never go back. And that's kind of how I felt coming in. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I want to be somewhere that's going to last, somewhere that's going to stand the test of time, and that's got the infrastructure to support me in the early years. And that's exactly how it worked out, really.
Wow, that's great. And I think it's really important that people do their own due diligence, go and find out what's out there, and whatever feels right for you is where you should be. That's really great advice.
Yeah.
So, go on.
I think, if I'd have just come to one company and got in, I wouldn't really have the conviction behind why I picked it. And you do get approached, other companies saying, oh, we'll pay you a salary and whatever, but it just wasn't right fit for me, really.
Well, especially for you, because you did want to have your own business, and that's part of the appeal for you. So,
Exactly.
having a carrot of a salary and employed while somewhere else isn't going to cut it for you.
No.
So let's talk about that now then. So when people come through the St James's Place Academy, there are 2 routes available. You can either start your own business as you have, or you can join an existing business and become an advisor within that business. So you were a reasonably young age. I mean, it's up to you whether you share how old you were when you joined us. And you did make that decision to start a business. Do you want to sort of talk us through that decision-making process?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was 24 when I got accepted onto the academy, and I was 25 when I sort of came out into the real world and went to go and speak to clients. I would say that everyone's different. So my personality is, the way I try to explain it to my friends is, and I don't play computer games anymore, I don't have any time, but if I were growing up and I'd be playing on a rugby or cricket or a football game, I would log on and go put it on ultimate hard straight away and keep playing it until I was better at it. So I'd lose 20-0 in my first game on FIFA or something, and then eventually I'd get good at it. And that is my personality type. I'll figure out, okay, what is the hardest, most rewarding thing? Right, I'll shut myself in there and eventually I'll figure it out. I don't mind if I trip over and have a terrible time at some point. I'll just want to get there. And so I was always going to go in on the partner route. I was like, right, I'll just chuck myself in there. And I was fortunate that I had the capacity to do that. My age, when I didn't have a mortgage, I didn't have a family or kids, I didn't even have a girlfriend. I was just, go on then, you've got to make it work. And don't get me wrong, it's difficult, and people have got to be prepared for the reality that it is hard to get going. You need that momentum. Once you get the momentum, things change. And getting that momentum was the tough part for me. So if I didn't necessarily have that mindset, I would have very happily gone in as an advisor. And every advisor sort of opportunity is different depending on the practice they join. So the route to success may look different for different people, but that's the reason why I threw myself in at the deep end. It's just, that's always what I was going to do, and I'm really, really glad I did. It's all going very much in the right direction.
And how many years ago did you come out of the academy?
I think I've been in the field, in inverted commas, for 5.5 years. So I came out in March 2017.
Gosh, time flies, doesn't it? Because I think I've been at SJP for 5 years, and I can remember you from those early days. So
we went to Ealing Rugby Club, didn't we, to go and have a chat with some people.
Really, really flown since then, hasn't it? That was good. So back to you. Were your family disappointed that you didn't go into farming and help them run their business?
No, well, my mother especially always wanted me to, if you want to go and do that, great, but go out and do something on your own back first, and you'd always develop your own experience. You could always bring back if you wanted to, but give yourself an opportunity to see what else is out there. I think Dad would probably quite have liked me to, but at the same time, I think he appreciates what I've managed to achieve, and I am then bringing that back. I sort of referenced earlier, I've taken over a part of a family farm, and I'm using what I've learned and the way I run a business on that, and there's a lot of value add that I'm able to add, which is great. And the farming's still in my blood. It's very much part of my life. I use a lot of farming metaphors with my clients about growing crops and fertilizing them, and then don't get upset when it rains. You just got to get through it. So it's so embedded in my DNA, and I very much intend to take on the farming mantle in a way that allows me to continue to run my own business. You can contract anyone who's watched Clarkson's Farm will know that he doesn't actually do any of the farming. He gives it to his contractor. So we do that. So I think a little bit of apprehension in the beginning on the basis that is he going to be able to make it work? And I think for the first couple of years, while it was hard work getting it going, there was a bit of, are you sure you've made the right decision? And now it's very much the opposite, I think.
I love that. So you've learned commercial skills here that are actually benefiting the family farm. That's fantastic. Well, we'll come back to what life looks like now and in the future a bit later. But let's go through sort of your academy experience. So 5-6 years ago that you came to the training, so the training itself will look quite different today. What was that like for you? How did you find the exams, etc.?
Well, I really enjoyed. So it was classroom based when we did it. So there was 18 of us, I think, in a classroom, 4 days a week, sort of thing, for 6 months. So it was pretty intense. But we all got on really well. We had a great time, and we really learned. And I'm still in touch with a good chunk of them now. You know, we were all on a WhatsApp group, and we're sharing ideas and experiences and stuff. And that, again, sort of referencing that spirit of the partnership bit. In theory, we're all in competition with each other if you want to really look at it black and white, but no one feels like that. Everyone's very much invested in helping each other succeed because we've all been through the same thing. So when I have a bad day and someone spots that, they'll know, well, I have had a bad day because of those reasons, and here's how I got through it. Or, you know, it has the potential, if you go out with another network mate, say, you might end up feeling pretty lonely when stuff's not going so good. Whereas that's just not the case here. So that academy peer group was really, I think, essential. And I'm terrible at exams, so all the support was really helpful. I'm more of a practical doer, so when looking at all the exams, all of the training support we've got and all the sessions was pretty invaluable to me. I'll be honest. I think I would have struggled to get through them just on my own. I think I'm intelligent enough to do them. I just don't know whether I'd have sat down and really buckled in for some revision.
So having that structure of the training was really helpful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this is what we're going to do when, this is what you need to have prepared by this point. You know, I'm very much a little bit like what I referenced earlier, throw yourself in the deep end, know where you're trying to head, then colour in the gaps. SJP laid that part out, and then all I had to do was colour in the gaps. So massively helpful.
That's great. And did you have to resit any exams, or did you manage to pass them all first time?
I resat 2. One, though, I had like a personal tragedy like the day before the exam, so I went and did it, but I knew I wasn't going to pass it, so I resat that. I think that was pensions, and then I did fail the tax one first time, but was absolutely fine second time. Yeah, ironically, not the best with numbers when it comes to doing loads and loads of calculations. You know, I now just use my calculator and my power planner to do it.
Well, that's quite interesting, because I think it's a common myth that you have to be great at maths. And I've passed the exams, and I got a C at GCSE maths, and I've managed to pass the exams myself. So I think I agree with you that so long as you're competent with a calculator and you learn what the formulas are for the exam, you can absolutely get through them. And then once you're on the other side, you've got all the tools available to you that you need in order to sort of help clients. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer that, you know, through academics, it's always difficult when you're younger because it's not being practically applied to anything. But when I sit down and do a carry forward calculation for a client on their pension, which is in theory a pretty complicated calculation, you know, A, I've got my power planner who's done it a million times before, but also B, I'm like, this is my client whom I know, this is going to make a massive difference to their life. You know, it becomes, suddenly you can see the wood for the trees pretty sharpish when it has a practical application and in real world. So yeah, you don't need to be good at maths to do this job, and you can become good at the maths you need to be good at to do this job.
Great tip, absolutely. So let's rewind a little bit and think about how you came in, and we call it the selection process. So how was that stage for you, and did you feel supported through that?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty quite a fine-tuned process. So again, SJP, the people I met were very helpful in effectively, they called it self-selection. They're like, we're going to put enough barriers in front of you as part of this process for you to figure out if it's right for you or not. So by the end, they always say a lot of people will go, okay, it's not quite for me, before they then get to the point whereby they're ready to accept an offer to go on the course or not, or go into the academy. So doing things like sounding out with your current network. Yeah, I did toddle off to family, friends and say, if I did this, am I the kind of character that you think would be good at it? And obviously, you take what people say with a pinch of salt, because they're probably just being nice. But I then since realised, having taken a lot of them on as clients, they were being sincere. And I always think that you can define probably whether you're going to be good at the job by if you turn to your best friend and they genuinely and say, would you trust me with all of your life savings? If they're like, absolutely not, it's probably not going to be the right job for you. But if they go, oh yeah, in theory, yeah, sure, then you're probably knocking on the right door.
That's another great analogy. Thank you, Declan. I think that's so true. And I would certainly be really honest with friends of mine, because, you know, you are asking them about career defining choices and, you know, life defining choices. So their honesty is really important. But I think often that soundings part can feel a little bit intimidating at the start. But once you get out there and have conversation, it's a bit of market research and it should give you confidence. Or the other way, give you a red flag that says, actually, this might not be for me. It's really important.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately doing those soundings is a bit like doing the job, you know, even if whether you've been referred somebody who's like, I need to do this right now, or somebody who doesn't really understand what financial advice is, you're effectively asking them, will you, I'll manage your life savings for you to a certain degree. And if you feel you need to be able to get past that, being able to effectively pitch that to somebody, because that's what the job is half the time.
Exactly. You have to be really trusting and build that rapport really quickly, and that trust really quickly, and the empathy. And often people take the choice, and we'll talk about your choice, but some people lean into friends and family as their first clients, and others don't want to do that. And there's no right or wrong way. It's whatever's right for you. So which of those two routes did you choose, Declan?
Well, it turned out half my family were already with SJP and pretty quickly, so that didn't go quite so well. I think the friends family thing is always a really interesting one, and I think what I've learned is if you're going to go down the friends and family route, you just need to do the upfront contracting with them on the basis that, look, we are friends or we are family. This is completely separate. This isn't a glass box. And anything that happens in the glass box stays in the glass box. So if you're unhappy for whatever reason and we decide to go our separate ways, can we promise each other now that it's not going to affect our personal relationship? You know, the reality is that something probably won't go wrong, and you trust me because you know me and trust that I'm doing everything that I say I'm going to do and in the right ways with your best interest at heart. And that is the truth. You know, when my friends or family message me, I almost get, more involved in it because I'm so I have such a desire to make sure it's a good result for them. Not to say any more than my other clients, but you know what I mean. You just get that feeling of, I need this, make sure this goes right. So, it's that upfront contracting of, there's a glass box here of our relationship, separate working relationship, personal relationship. So I think that can really help settle your mind with regards, should I ask, should I not? And if that family friend says, actually, no, don't want to do it, then that's fine. You have to go in expecting that might be the case. So friends and family. And then when I realized that maybe my initial network wasn't yielding for me the kind of clients that I thought I was going to be able to take on, because you have a business plan, can I make this work? In theory, if I take on a number of clients, it should be fine. When that wasn't working out so well, I had to look for other avenues to find clients. And I went down what we call the professional introducers or professional connections route, which is whereby you're sort of networking and speaking with other professional services providers, whether that be in tax, law, property, debt provision, who have access to existing clients who may need wealth management services or financial advice. And that's not a secret. A lot of people do that. But I needed access to the kind of clients that I needed, and I couldn't find any. So I went down that route, and that yielded some brilliant relationships that I still have today. I've taken on some wonderful clients through it. And I initially started out with estate agents rather than the accountants and the solicitors, because I was 25 years old, green behind the ears, and they all saw me coming a mile off. So I wasn't going to get a huge amount from that. Whereas on the property side, I still am a huge believer that there's a massive opportunity out there when it comes to the property market, and more so now with rates where they are. And and they were really engaged. They were really interested to talk to me because it was not something they'd heard before. And, it was something that they would come across all the time, like clients moaning about capital gains tax or rental income tax or whatever, and downsizing or probate sales. And that I sort of found a bit of a tether in there. I kept pulling on it, and it got me the initial momentum I needed.
Amazing. And did you get support while in the academy with engineering those opportunities?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. I had a really brilliant, they were called PDM at the time, but now I think they're called ADMs, aren't they? Development managers. Mine was a chap called Matthew Ings, and he was brilliant. He saw my potential when I struggled a bit at the beginning, and he took me under his wing and just encouraged me, and just would sit down with me and look at the opportunities, say, okay, well, how about you talk to him about this or that I maybe hadn't come across yet, and I'd go and do the research. So relationships like that particular one was completely invaluable to me. If I hadn't had somebody who maybe had believed in me as much, I think I would have really struggled. So that was completely invaluable.
And what else in terms of support do you get? So you get we call them SJP loves an acronym, don't they? Declan?
Yeah.
It's acronym for everything. So apologies. So ADM is Academy Development Manager. So did you get anybody else supporting you in addition to an ADM?
Yeah, well, SJP just has all the resources. They're there, whether you're a day one partner or you're a principal partner who's been here for 20 odd years or whatever. Whether you need help on things like investment management, tax and technical questions, whatever. In terms of sort of peer-to-peer stuff, I got a mentor, a chap called Simon Neville, who's a pretty successful partner, and he was brilliant as well. So he would give me his time. He'd let me sit in on meetings with his clients, and I learned sort of in the way that he would run his meetings, maybe things that I could optimize. And he'd be supportive. He'd take me out for lunch and be a bit of therapy. How are you feeling? And we're still in touch now, and reminds me I should drop him a line, actually, go for lunch or something. But so a mentor, my academy PD or development manager, and then your peers. You don't have to just speak to one mentor. You can sort of make friends with other partners who have been around for a bit longer, and they'll happily give you their time to talk through how you're getting on and what they can do to help.
Amazing. And you mentioned that spirit of the partnership earlier, and we're fortunate at SJP to have over 2,500 businesses and over 4,500 advisors. And that spirit of the partnership really plays into the academy, where everybody does have a mentor. So there is somebody within the SJP community to have access to, a person like your mentor, where you can shadow their meetings. And for me, I think that's probably one of the fastest ways to learn, is to
absolutely
sit with people doing the job who are already really successful at that job. So that is brilliant to hear. And what else does the academy teach you? So we know you get the qualifications and the exams, but what else do they teach you in your training period?
Like the important stuff. So obviously the exams are important because you need to know the theory, but then the practicalities of how it works in real life. So the compliance, making sure you're sticking within, you know what the rules are. So make sure that you don't accidentally say something you shouldn't say, because there's a lot of jargon involved. And if you're not careful, you can end up going down the wrong rabbit hole if you're not experienced. So that sort of compliance piece, making sure you're staying, on the right lane, and then all the soft skills. So, there's a big difference between asking someone a question like, what financial advice do you want? And just watching someone look at you, like look straight through you, and then a question like, tell me about what money was like for you growing up. And it's just a question, and you're getting at the same thing, but the way in which you can help the client understand themselves, because a lot of money is emotional. The way people spend their money is pretty much based on their upbringing half the time. And if you can learn to ask the right questions to help the client understand themselves and their own motivations. The amount of times you get a client come in and they say, you run through, okay, what's important to you? And they list off all these things. And then you look at their finances and you go, well, you just told me these 5 things are the most important things to you in the entire world. And you're not doing anything at all with your current finances. In fact, you're probably doing the opposite. You're spending money on things you don't really need or want. So what's the difference here? Why is this happening? And once the client realizes that and starts to learn themselves why their behavior is a certain way, they then feel motivated to change it. But without that first bit, the best plan in the world, sit down in front of somebody and say, you need to put this much into a pension, this much into an ISA, take this life insurance out, invest this, blah, blah, blah. And they won't do it. There'll be no adherence to do it because they understand why. And the why part, the motivations around money and how they feel about it is ultimately the driver behind when they take action.
That's so fascinating. So it's a lot of relationship, empathy, seeing the world through that person's eyes and really understanding the way they tick. Yeah,
and the academy taught me that, obviously you learn more as you go on. You can only learn so much in a certain period of time, but that was a crucial part of the academy process. Was when you actually sit with a client, you can have all the knowledge in the world, but being able to articulate and help a client is important, a really important part. And that's, was a really important part of the process.
Brilliant. So this isn't transactional. This is very much relationship based.
Yeah, absolutely. Because otherwise you can go online, click a button, and chat GPT or whatever will tell you what to do with your money. But ultimately, people won't adhere to that. They won't do that. Well, a vast majority, there will be a small percentage of the population who'll be perfectly happy with that. But I genuinely don't believe that that kind of process can help a client understand themselves when it comes to their motivations about money. And again, the adherence is the single most important factor, is adhering to a plan. And if there's no adherence, the plan maybe is useless.
Yeah. Wow. Really interesting. So very much a people role, communication and relationship role, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
So Declan, you have a distinct look and feel to your business. So tell me about you and your personal brand, and then also what it feels like coming in and starting your own business. Does it feel like it's a cookie cutter SJP, or just what did that feel like for you?
Yeah. So I didn't. I think I rebranded last year. So it's been about coming up on 18 months now that I've been under Lamyman & Co Wealth Advisory, which is my practice name. So I have my own branding, still very much affiliated with St. James's Place. So I started off under SJP's banner, and that was enormously useful. People have heard of SJP, they understand, the size of the business, the financial security of the business. And they feel like they're in safe hands. If it is a company you've never heard of before, there's only so much Googling someone will do. They're not going to go on Companies House and look at the accounts, figure out how financially viable the business is and how long it's going to last and what the professional indemnity insurance is all like. St. James's Place opened a lot of doors, which is enormously useful. And then as my portfolio has grown and I've sort of grown into the role myself, and I know that clients tend to, once they're taking you on board, the relationship is with their partner or their advisor. It's putting a personal twist on what is a great company, but ultimately the service is like a bespoke family boutique service in terms of the advice, with the backing of the infrastructure of the company, which is enormous. So the clients feel like they're part of your family, your client family. So being able to put a personal brand on it that reflects you as the partner, it just really helps sort of build that relationship with clients. So a lot of my clients will know I'm from the farming stock and whatever. And then in my branding, I have 4 key stages to wealth management. It's grow, consolidate, decumulate, and legacy. But they're like stages in a farming cycle for me. So accumulate is growing. You're sowing your crops, you're putting it in, fertilizing them over time, trying to make sure they don't die. And then consolidate is when you're getting ready for harvest. You've got all of your crops ready. This is kind of like pre-retirement, and you're thinking, I think you're about ready to harvest now. what should we be doing, starting spraying off crops, reducing risk, all that kind of stuff. And then you start to decumulate, you start harvesting, selling your crops down, just like selling your pension down and taking money out of it over time to sustain yourself. And the legacy is kind of like passing the farm on. You've created something and built something that the next generation can benefit from. How are you going to leave it all? And for me personally, legacy is an enormous part of who I am. And I was even thinking about the legacy I would leave when I was 25, when I started. It's all threaded, it threads through everything. So that flow for me and that approach is replicated in my brand that my clients can relate to and that they like.
Fantastic. And do you have clients who have their own farms? Are you in like a farming community? Do you get lots of clients that way?
Ironically, I know I'm in the city in London. A lot of my clients are sort of high earning city professionals and business owners. I do have farmers as clients, don't get me wrong. Because I spend a lot of time down in London, that's kind of the way the client bank is built. But I think people kind of like it, especially over COVID, everyone got locked in. People like the countryside, and that kind of going back to nature thing that is sort of kicked off after COVID is something people can relate to.
Well, I really like the analogy because that makes it so relatable, so relatable. So I think it's super clever. So did you get help with your brand from SJP, or was it something you went and did by yourself?
Yeah, no, so SJP are massively helpful. So Harry is the marketing consultant within SJP who helped me with my brand. I kind of would articulate, this is the kind of thing I want to do, and she'd be able to help me again, color in the gaps. Okay, so you're here, you want to be somewhere like that. Here are all the steps you need to go through in order to refine the brand. Here's some ideas for how you could bring it to life, color schemes, and then put me in touch with logo designer, where they sort of brought to life my really rubbish sketch that I'd done on my iPad. So yeah, I would have no idea how to approach it really, and I'd probably end up spending stupid amounts of money with a branding agency trying to constantly redesign something that I probably didn't end up liking. Whereas this was, this is a very well trodden path. Here are some other practices that have done it. Which ones do you like? Which ones do you not like? These are the ones you like. Okay, well, this is the way they did it, etc. So yeah, absolutely. And I still probably wouldn't have done it if it weren't for the support I'd had to do that.
That's great, and I love that because you do get to be your absolute own brand. It's your brand, but as you say, SJP is the sub brands. It's in the background. It provides that element of security and safety and financial strength for people.
Yeah,
that's super interesting. So at the end we'll let you know Declan's website, so you can check it out. So you mentioned you were in your 20s when you started, and I guess your personal network were a similar age to you. You mentioned that it was challenging. It wasn't the plan wasn't going to plan originally, and you turned to professional connections, and for you that was estate agencies. Now you're more established 5 years in. Do you get lots of client referrals, or are you still in that kind of building phase? What does life feel like now in terms of client acquisition?
So it's a combination of, I'm very fortunate that, I've expanded my professional network, and I have some brilliant people in there that, I quite often refer to as well, whether it's for mortgage broking or, will writing or private client solicitors or stuff like that. So that's more diversified now. I've been doing it long enough that the conversations that I'm having with those kind of connections is much more sensible and productive. And then I built up a client bank who kind of know what it's all about and are very happy to recommend me. So I probably get about a referral a week, maybe two on a good week. And what I've also learned is when you speak to somebody, even if it's not the right time for them to take on an advisor, or maybe their need is different, but they need help, I'll always give somebody 45 minutes of my time to help them. That'll be harder as we're getting busier and busier, and those have yielded, people are just so grateful, and those kind of client interactions are brilliant. And then they may recommend you to somebody who does really have a need. So a lot of it is, and if people join the academy, they'll hear this idea of activity. It's just being active, and just more meetings you have, the more people you speak to, the more touch points you end up having, the faster your business will build. If you just sit at home and wait for it to walk in the door, I'm afraid it's not going to happen. So yeah, that's kind of the way the business is structured at the moment. We've just taken on another practice manager, and I've got a power planner, so I've got back office infrastructure to help support me, so I can spend more time with the clients, because it is a highly regulated market, so therefore the paperwork requirement is pretty onerous, and quite rightly so. But it makes it, once you get over a certain number of clients, it's pretty difficult to do everything yourself if you want to have any sort of social life, or family life. So yeah, that's kind of where we are now. Still looking to build up the client bank over the next couple of years, and then I would like to, once it gets to a certain size, bring in an advisor or two over time. I have a 10-year plan of where we want to be. I don't want to grow an enormous business. If it was me, 2 advisors and enough back office infrastructure to support us, and a really, really great portfolio of clients that know what we're about and are really well looked after. That's what I'm aiming toward, really.
I love that 10-year plan, and just the ability to build exactly what you envision. There aren't any limits on what that might look like, and so for you to have that clarity now is fantastic.
I've heard of partners looking to, you want to have 100 advisors and an enormous business, and some people who have been doing it for 20 years and it's still just them. That flexibility and preference is there, which again is, if I had someone say, no, you need to do this, I would get frustrated by that. So
yeah, absolutely. So what would you say have been your biggest challenges since you began?
I think it is that initial momentum piece. It looks different for everyone, but when people start, they tend to have a bit of a spike in their activity, because they go and see all the people they've sounded out and their friends and their family, and they take on a few new clients and everything's great. And then they get the lull afterwards, which is, okay, I've gone through the people who are interested, and now I'm left with not so much. And I don't have loads of clients, so I don't have loads of referrals coming in. And anyway, they've only just started, so they maybe want to test your mettle a little bit before that point where they're happy to recommend you. So that little bit at the beginning is the hard part. Anyone who's ever done it will tell you that. And that's where SJP are super helpful, because they know that they've seen it done thousands and thousands of times before with the number of advisors that have come through. So that part is difficult, but SJP are there to support you. And then the difficulty is, once you are busy, is staying on top of everything. And that's where you would then look to recruit staff. So I think probably back end of last year, I was super busy, and I just didn't have the time to do the stuff that I wanted to. So having that back office infrastructure in place is super helpful. And again, SJP come in and they say, what are you trying to recruit for? This is the kind of job description you would use. This is the kind of payment rates you'd expect to hire somebody in the area. All that sort of consultancy that if I was completely on my own, I would have no idea where to start. Terrible. I had no idea how to write a contract for an employee. So, it was massively helpful.
Fantastic. That's good to hear. And as you say, with each stage of business, new challenges will arise, and then the benefits. So do you feel that the time and effort that you have put into this so far has paid off?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I'm 31 now. I have a business that does okay, and we're looking to build it. I have the freedom of my own time. I have some clients, I have a client bank that I appreciate so much. I like doing the job. Everyone has good days and bad days, but there are far more good days than bad days. One thing I will say is slightly stressful is the market sometimes. There's only so much you can do. You take on a client and you want to do a brilliant job for them, but when a war starts, or you have a COVID or a financial crisis, I've had to learn to get over that stress when that happens, because there's only so much you can do. We're not trading our clients' investments. We are investing for the long term, and that comes with ups and downs. And over time, I've learned that, and I have a much more upfront, well, not more upfront, but I'm very much more articulate in the way I speak to clients about when there's a bad time, it's going to go down. Hopefully not down as much, because we're pretty conservative, and you've got to be okay with that. And if you're not going to be okay with the fact that it will go up and down, then it's not the right thing for you. And that's really helped me manage the stress. So that's just something personal to me, but I think a lot of people feel that way sometimes.
Absolutely. And if you had chosen a different business, whether it be a fitness business or something else, where do you think you'd be now compared to where you are now with SJP?
I have no idea. I'll be perfectly honest. It's difficult to imagine it otherwise. Probably be working for somebody else still, not be very happy. So, yeah, that just the freedom to know you can take the business any direction and keep building. Like every day, you're just building. Again, I'll use that sort of like computer game analysis analogy. I would never go on and just play for 5 minutes. I'm making it sound like I'm a right gamer. I'm not. I haven't played computer games since I was like
analogy though, even I understand.
but I would always play on career mode. I'd always have to be like trying to get better, trying to improve, and that is possible. Every year you can see your year-on-year growth. Number of clients you've taken in, their investment returns, what business you've written. You can see that every year you're getting better, and that progress that's what I get a kick out of. And I don't know, it's difficult to know because I never see it, but I don't know where I would have been able to get that with the infrastructure support. Because if you put too much paperwork and too much stuff in front of me, my adherence level goes down because I find it frustrating. It's not for me. So all the administration support and the academy support and the business partnering support and the consultancy is there to take that burden not away, but to help you with it, so you can really make that progress that you get the reward from.
That's fantastic, and I think progress is important for everybody, isn't it? But I love that vision of each year you're tracking that progress, you can see it growing, and a huge amount of satisfaction from it. So if you're happy to, would you share a little bit about the reason why you're personally so passionate about helping people with their own finances?
Yeah, I think, well, don't know if they'll ever listen to this, but my parents split up when I was a bit younger. I was sort of 12 or 13, and that comes with a lot of financial difficulty. And I'm now involved in various bits of family businesses and stuff, and the stress that comes from money uncertainty. Uncertainty and managing money and finances. It causes a lot of problems for a lot of people. And that's whether you've got, sometimes, ironically, the people who have less worry a lot less about it. It's just a case of, ticking along. Whereas when there's more stuff going on, it can become enormously stressful. So being able to step into the shoes of somebody who can solve that problem, when I witnessed it a bit, it was very empowering for me to be able to do that. And people go and just be like, I've got all this stuff and I don't know what to do with it, help. And to just go, yeah, I'll sort all of it out for you. You just wait. I will be in touch with questions. I'll figure it all out, come to you, and I'll explain why we're doing everything. And being able to take that burden away from people who are just trying to probably work a pretty busy, high-powered job or run a complicated business and have a family and a social life and want to go on holidays and just don't have the, or the understanding and the knowledge of how to do it themselves all the time, or even the inclination. I just get a real kick out of that, to be honest. Yeah.
It's incredible. Like you say, often people are too busy, and I think initially when people come through the academy, they might be nervous of approaching somebody who on the outside appears extremely successful. The image in their mind is they've got all this stuff sorted, but actually the reality is now you're 5 years in, they don't have the time, and actually you're really helping them to figure something out that they just don't have the time to spend on.
Yeah, and it's such a surprising business in terms of who you meet and who, you're like, oh, these guys are going to be sewn up. They're going to have everything, I'm going to be able to provide a couple of pointers and that's going to be it. And then it's, I won't say a mess, but you're like, oh, okay, right. Yeah, this has never been addressed. I've met people who are incredibly high powered, partners at massive firms who are still using student bank accounts. They never changed it from their university. I mean, that's wild to me. But to some people, they're like, oh, I just don't, I just don't have any time or energy to do it. And then there are people who are really good. They're rare, I'll be honest. They're pretty rare. But people who are like, I've done all this, and you look at it and you go, oh, that's great. If you ever become too busy to keep on top of it, I'm happy to take it, but you don't need me right now. Again, rare, but it does happen.
Yeah, at each end of the spectrum. Really interesting. So what's been a great piece of advice or inspiration that you've personally received in your career so far?
I don't know if anyone ever said it or whether I just read it, but building a career is a little bit like investing. You just have to be patient and keep doing the right things, even when it's rubbish. So let's use an investment as an example. And the analogy I use is, on the farming side. So, when it rains, you don't run outside too much. You don't run outside and pull the crops up and try and plant them again. When it stops raining, that's a really quick fire way to kill all your crops. And same way in investing, you don't panic and make lots of changes and throw the toys out the pram when the markets are having a wobble because of a Ukraine situation or whatnot. So same in your career, when you have a very clear vision, you should have a very clear vision about where you want to go with it. There are going to be good days and bad days. On the bad days, it's remembering where you're going and why that will get you through that tough stuff. Kind of, I guess, bit like the Simon Sinek stuff, figure out why you're doing this. So when you do have a rough day, or maybe a client's not very nice to you for whatever reason, because they're probably having a bad day, you can just anchor into what it is that you're doing and just carry on and just be patient. And suddenly you look behind you and you go, I can't believe I've come that far from where I was. In what feels like a heartbeat. Didn't feel like a heartbeat at the time, but now looking back, you're like, oh, that's okay. I'm glad I carried on going.
Absolutely. And I think we had a pre-call, Declan, and you mentioned the 3 years out of minis. You want to touch on that that longevity?
What's that? Sorry.
So you mentioned it's like the hard bit was at the beginning. So it was, let's say it was 2 or 3 years, but this is a career for 20 plus years. So actually, that hard bit is really worth it.
Yeah, it's a tiny percentage of what the longevity is in the big scheme of things. And what we'll say is if you're, haven't had an established career and you're thinking about change, or you've maybe had a family and you're thinking about getting back into it, and you've got some of that experience and career in the bank, your timeline will be far more accelerated than maybe it was for me, because I didn't have that bank of ex-colleagues and network and people who knew me long enough to trust me necessarily. So, my timeline is a rough couple of years or 3 years at the start, over 30 years. Someone else could be a rough 7 or 8 months out of 10 years. So it will be different for everybody. And it's just the juice is worth the squeeze at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a really nice way to look at it, because like you say, at the time it feels a long time, but when you look at the bigger picture, it's a small amount. But then you have to plan for that small amount of that. I hope that we helped you to do that in terms of getting through the tough times.
Absolutely. As in, the academy know full well the challenges that lie ahead, and they do prepare you for them.
Yeah, that's good to hear. So if people are watching this, they're thinking of maybe coming to have a conversation with us at the academy, what advice would you give to them?
Well, try and find somebody within SJP, because it's so big. You might have friends of a friends of a friends, or you might know someone already the person you might have referred you in, for example, and have a proper sit down with them and go, how did you do it? What would you do differently? All that stuff. and then have a real look at your own situation and go, where do I really want to be in 10 years? Do I want to still be doing what I'm doing? Or do I want to create something? Do I want ownership of something? And if the answer is I don't want to carry on doing what I'm doing, and I want the potential to earn the right to be my own boss, whether you go through an advisor and then start your own, or whether you go in as a partner, is the juice going to be worth the squeeze? And the answer is inevitably yes. Am I prepared to take a little bit of risk to get there? Well, you should do, because you don't get anything without a little bit of risk. If it was that easy, then everyone would do something and no one would do any investments, because everyone would just take no risk and be really wealthy or have a successful business or whatever it might be. So, am I prepared to take the risk and put the hard work in? And is it something that I want in the long term? And if the answer to those things is yes, then you're not going to find a better opportunity in this market. I genuinely, with all complete sincerity, do not believe that there's anywhere else you can go and get the support that you get to build your own business within a company that's financially secure and that's there just purely to try and help you be successful.
Amazing. Well, thank you for your very personal opinion on that, Declan. That's amazing. So look, how can people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. So it's Declan Lamyman, which is a weird surname. So I don't think there are any of those kicking around. And if you just Google my name or Lamyman & Co, website will come up. And it's all full of tractor analogies and combining crops and stuff. So yeah, that's where you can find me. And yeah, I'm always happy. I've had people reach out of nowhere to ask me what my experience was like. So if anyone wants to chat, then I've been more than happy to give them my opinion.
Thank you very, very much. Well, thank you so much for joining us on SJP Advisor Stories, and we hope you found this really interesting and helpful.
No, thanks for having me.